The deep blue waters of Narration trembled as another explosion shook the ocean floor. Admiral Taijin floated in his command center, his jellyfish-like body pulsing with worried bioluminescent patterns. Through the transparent walls of the underwater city, he could see the burning debris falling from space like deadly rain. The Kroktari had been attacking for 3 years now. Their black ships hung in orbit like hungry vultures, slowly picking apart the Vellani Federation's defenses. Taijin's people were peaceful by nature. They had built their civilization in the safety of deep oceans, thinking the vast waters would protect them. They were wrong. "Admiral, the outer defense grid is failing," reported Captain Minji, her tentacles dancing across the bioluminescent controls. Her voice carried through the water with urgent clicks and whistles that the translation machines turned into words. "The Kroktari are moving their harvest ships into position." Taijin's body flashed red with anger. Harvest ships. The Kroktari didn't just kill their enemies. They captured them, studied them, and used their genetic material to make themselves stronger. It was the fate worse than death that every species in the galaxy feared. "How many ships do we have left?" Taijin asked. 15 fighters and 3 damaged cruisers, Minji replied. Her patterns showed deep sadness. "The Kroktari have over 40 ships, including 6 of their big dreadnoughts." Taijin closed his large eyes for a moment. 15 fighters against 40 ships. It was hopeless. His people had fought bravely, but they were scientists and artists, not warriors. The Kroktari were born for war. On the main display screen, Taijin watched the enemy ships moving closer to his homeworld. The Kroktari vessels looked like giant metal bugs with sharp edges and glowing red weapons. They moved with the confidence of predators who knew their prey was trapped. "Sir?" came a young voice from the communication station. Lieutenant Doyan was barely old enough to serve, but he had volunteered when the war started. "The Kroktari commander is sending a message." The screen flickered and showed a horrible face. Admiral Vorthik of the Kroktari Empire looked like a giant spider crossed with a lobster. His black carapace was covered in battle scars, and his multiple eyes glowed with cruel intelligence. When he spoke, his voice was like breaking glass. "Vellani scum," Vorthik said, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "Your pathetic resistance ends now. Surrender your spawning grounds, and we will make your deaths quick. Fight us, and we will harvest your young first while you watch." Taijin's body blazed with angry red light. "Cut the transmission," he ordered. The screen went dark, but everyone in the command center had heard the threat. The Vellani spawning grounds were sacred places where their children grew, in special pools. The idea of the Kroktari touching those innocent young ones made Taijin's blood burn. "Admiral," Minji said quietly, "we could evacuate. Load the civilian transports and run for the outer colonies." "And leave our children behind?" Taijin flashed. "Never. Besides, the Kroktari would just follow us. They have faster ships." The command center fell silent except for the steady hum of machinery and the distant rumble of explosions. Everyone knew they were going to die. The only question was how many Kroktari they could take with them. Suddenly, young Lieutenant Doyan looked up from his station. "Admiral, I'm picking up something strange." "What kind of strange?" Taijin moved closer to the communications console. "It's a monitoring station at the edge of known space. They're asking for details about our situation, the signal. It's coming from a place called Earth." Taijin had never heard of Earth or the species that lived there. In 3 years of desperate fighting, they had sent distress calls to every known civilization in the galaxy. Most had ignored them. A few had sent messages of sympathy, but no help. Nobody wanted to fight the Kroktari Empire. "Send them our tactical data," Taijin ordered. "If they want to know how the Kroktari operate, we'll show them." Minji looked surprised. Sir, should we really give military information to an unknown species? What does it matter now? Taijin replied. Maybe someone will learn from our deaths. Maybe the next species the Kroktari attack will be better prepared. Doyan worked at his station for several minutes, uploading everything they knew about Kroktari ships, weapons, and tactics. When he finished, he turned to Taijin with a strange expression. Admiral, they're asking if we want help. The command center went completely quiet. Help? From strangers they had never met. It seemed too good to be true. What kind of help? Taijin asked carefully. They're asking for our exact location and the size of the Kroktari fleet. They say they have ships in the area. Taijin felt a tiny spark of hope in his chest, but he tried not to let it grow too large. How many ships do they have? There was a long pause as Doyan waited for a response. When it came, his bioluminescent patterns showed confusion. They say 12 ships, sir, including 3. I think the translation is Dreadnoughts. The spark of hope died. 12 ships against 40 Kroktari vessels? These humans, whoever they were, would just be throwing their lives away. Send them our thanks, Taijin said sadly, but tell them to stay away. 12 ships cannot stand against the Kroktari fleet. There's no point in more people dying today. But even as he said it, Taijin felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Someone, somewhere in the galaxy, had heard their call for help. Someone had been willing to risk their own lives for strangers. Maybe his people would die today, but at least they would not die forgotten. The humans sent one final message. We're coming anyway. Hold on. Then the communication channel went silent, leaving the Vellani to wonder what kind of species would choose to fight a hopeless battle for people they had never met. In a few hours, they would find out. Above them, the Kroktari fleet moved into final attack position, unaware that somewhere in the void, human dreadnoughts were charging their weapons and plotting jump coordinates. The galaxy was about to learn that some species believed there were things worth dying for, and some species were very, very good at making other people do the dying. The bridge of the TNS Indomitable hummed with activity as Admiral Hayok studied the tactical display. 12 human ships hung in space like sleeping giants, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that most alien species had never seen before. The Admiral was a tall, serious man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Today, those eyes burned with purpose. Report from all ships, sir, said Commander Sunmi from her tactical station. She was young for her rank, but her mind worked like a computer when it came to space warfare. All dreadnoughts are loaded and ready. The Eternal Fury, Righteous Thunder, and Iron Covenant are standing by for jump coordinates. Hayok nodded and touched his communication panel. Captain Jiwan, status report. On the main screen, Captain Jiwan appeared from the bridge of the Eternal Fury. She was a small woman with fierce eyes and a scar across her left cheek from the Centauri Wars. Her ship was the pride of the human fleet, a massive dreadnought that could crack planets if needed. All systems green, Admiral, Jiwan reported. My crew is ready for whatever we find out there. Good. Captain Dongho, Captain Kiao, are your ships prepared? 2 more faces appeared on screen. Captain Dongho of the Righteous Thunder was a big, quiet man who let his weapons do his talking. Captain Kiao of the Iron Covenant was known for his tactical brilliance and his habit of humming old Earth songs during battle. Ready to burn some bugs, sir, Dongho said in his deep voice. My crew is eager to test our new plasma lances. Kiang added with a small smile. Hayok turned to his communications officer. Lieutenant Young Ho, any updates from the Vellani? Young Ho looked worried as he checked his instruments. The situation is getting worse, sir. The Kroktari are moving their harvest ships into orbit. Intelligence suggests they'll begin the extraction. Process within 6 hours. 6 hours. Hayok had been hoping for more time, but war never waited for convenience. He pulled up the star charts and studied the jump route to the Nerea system. It would take 3 precise jumps to reach the battle zone without alerting the enemy. "Sir," said Sunmi, looking up from her console, "I've been analyzing the tactical data the Vellane sent us. The Kroktari fleet is larger than expected. 6 heavy dreadnoughts, 12 cruisers, and over 20 smaller ships. We're looking at 43 enemy vessels." A silence fell over the bridge. 43 ships against 12 was bad odds by any measure. But Hayok had not survived 20 years of command by backing down from difficult fights. "What about there? Weapons and defenses?" he asked. "Primitive but effective," Sunmi replied. "They use kinetic weapons and basic energy shields. Their ships are heavily armored but slow. They're designed to overwhelm weaker opponents through sheer numbers. And they've never fought humans before," added Lieutenant Mingo from the Iron Covenant's tactical station. His voice came through the communication link with confidence. "They don't know what our weapons can do." Hayok allowed himself a small smile. That was true. In all their conquests across the galaxy, the Kroktari had never encountered plasma lances, mass drivers, or human tactical doctrine. They were about to get a very unpleasant education. "Admiral," Young-Ho said suddenly, "incoming message from Earth Command." The communication crackled to life, and Fleet Admiral Park's voice filled the bridge. "Hayok, I've been monitoring your situation. Command is prepared to authorize additional forces if needed." "No time, sir," Hayok replied. "The Vellane don't. Have days to wait for reinforcements. We go with what we have." There was a pause. "Understood. You have full authorization to engage. Good hunting, Admiral." The line went dead, leaving Hayok with the weight of command. He looked around his bridge at the men and women who would follow him into battle. They were professionals, all of them veterans of previous conflicts, but this was different. This time they were fighting for strangers who had no one else to turn to. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayok," he said over the fleet communication channel. "In 1 hour, we will jump into enemy space to face an opponent that outnumbers us nearly 4 to 1. The Kroktari Empire has conquered dozens of species through fear and superior numbers. They think they are unbeatable." He paused, letting his words sink in. "They have never fought humans before. They don't understand that we don't calculate odds when innocent lives are at stake. They don't know that we've spent centuries learning how to kill things bigger and meaner than ourselves. Today, we teach them." Across the fleet, crews prepared for battle with the efficiency that only came from years of training. In the weapons bays, technicians loaded mass driver rounds that could punch through any known armor. In engineering, power cores were pushed to maximum output. In the hangars, fighter pilots checked their ships one last time. On the Eternal Fury, Captain Ji-Wan walked through her ship, speaking with her crew. "Remember," she told them, "the Kroktari harvest other species for their genetic material. They don't just kill, they turn their victims into resources. That stops today." Captain Dong-Ho stood in the weapon control center of the Righteous Thunder, watching his crew prepare the plasma lance batteries. These weapons could cut through metal like a hot knife through butter. The Kroktari had never seen anything like them. On the Iron Covenant, Captain Kayang hummed quietly to himself as he reviewed the tactical plan. His ship carried the newest weapons in the human arsenal, experimental systems that had been tested in simulations, but never in real combat. Today would be their first trial by fire. "Admiral," Sunmi reported, "all ships report ready for jump." Hayok took one last look at the tactical display showing the Kroktari fleet positions. In a few minutes, they would emerge from hyperspace, right into the middle of an enemy formation. The Krogtari would have every advantage except one. They didn't know what humans were capable of when pushed to fight. "Begin jump sequence," Hayok ordered. "First jump in 3.2.1. Execute." Space twisted around the human fleet as they entered hyperspace. The journey to the first waypoint would take 20 minutes, giving everyone time to make final preparations. Hayok used the time to review the attack plan one more time. They would jump into the system at maximum range, using their superior weapons to engage the enemy before the Krogtari could bring their numbers to bear. Hit hard, hit fast, and keep moving. It was classic human tactics. Use technology and training to overcome numerical disadvantage. "Second jump in 10 seconds, announced the navigation officer. Hayok felt the familiar tension that came before battle. Somewhere ahead, an innocent species was fighting for survival against impossible odds. They had sent out a call for help, never expecting anyone to answer. But humans had answered, because that's what humans did. Second jump complete. Preparing for final approach. All ships, this is Admiral Hayok. In 5 minutes, we arrive at Nerea. Remember, we're not just fighting for victory today. We're fighting to show the galaxy that evil does not go unopposed. That innocence has defenders. That when the call for aid goes out, humans respond. The final jump countdown began. 10 seconds. To contact with the enemy. 10 seconds until the Krogtari Empire learned that their reign of terror had limits. Jump in 3.2.1. Space exploded around them as 12 human ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Nerea. System. Immediately, their sensors detected the massive Krogtari fleet and the burning Villani homeworld below. "All ships," Hayok commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet. "Weapons free. Show them what happens when you threaten the innocent." The human dreadnoughts turned toward the enemy fleet like hunting wolves, their weapons charging with deadly energy. The Krogtari were about to discover that some species bite back. The Krogtari sensors screamed warnings as 12 unknown ships appeared at the edge of their formation. Admiral Vorthic's multiple eyes focused on the tactical display with irritation rather than concern. Another minor species had decided to play hero. It happens sometimes. Young civilizations that thought they could stand against the might of the Krogtari Empire. Identification? Vorthic clicked to his communications officer. "Unknown configuration, Admiral. The ships appear to be from a species called ... humans." Vorthic had never heard of humans, which meant they were probably some primitive species with delusions of grandeur. "How many ships?" 12, sir. 3 appear to be heavy cruisers. The rest are smaller vessels. Vorthic's mandibles clicked with amusement. 12 ships against his 43-vessel fleet? These humans were either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. "Send them the standard surrender demand," Vorthic ordered. "When they refuse, destroy them quickly. I want to return to harvesting the Villani before their genetic material degrades." But on the bridge of the Eternal Fury, Captain Jaiwan was not planning to surrender. She stood at her command station, watching the Krogtari fleet spread out before them like a swarm of metal insects. Her crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing weapons that the galaxy had never seen in action. "Target acquisition complete," reported her weapons officer. Mass drivers locked on the lead Krogtari dreadnought. "Fire," Jiwan ordered. The Eternal Fury's main gun spoke with thunder that crossed the void. 6 tungsten penetrator rounds each, weighing several tons, accelerated to 15% of light speed. They crossed the distance to their target in seconds, hitting the Krogtari flagship before its captain even realized the battle had begun. The tungsten rounds punched through the enemy ship's shields like they weren't there. They tore through the armored hull, through decks and corridors and vital systems, before exploding out the other side. The massive Kroktari dreadnought shuddered, rolled, and began venting atmosphere and debris. On his flagship's bridge, Admiral Vorthik watched in shock as his heaviest ship took catastrophic damage from a single salvo. Impossible, he clicked. No ship has that kind of firepower. But the humans were just getting started. Captain Dongho's Righteous Thunder opened fire with its plasma lance batteries. Beams of contained stellar fire reached across space, cutting into Kroktari cruisers with surgical precision. Where the plasma touched, metal didn't just melt, it turned to vapor. One enemy ship was cut completely in half, its two sections tumbling away in different directions. All ships engage at will. Admiral Hayok commanded from the Indomitable. The human fleet spread out into attack formation, each ship selecting targets with methodical precision. The Iron Covenant under Captain Kiao demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of human point defense systems as waves of Kroktari fighters approached. Lieutenant Minho coordinated the defensive fire, creating walls of laser and projectile death that shredded the incoming attack craft. "Sir," Minho reported to his captain, "enemy fighters are breaking off their attack runs. They've lost over 60% of their force." Captain Kiao hummed an old Earth song as he watched the tactical display. "Adjust targeting parameters. Let's see how their bombers handle concentrated fire." The Kroktari bomber formation, designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer numbers, met the reality of human CIWS systems. Automated weapons tracked and destroyed incoming missiles with mechanical precision, while laser clusters carved through bomber formations like a scythe. Through wheat dot on the Velani homeworld below, Admiral Taijin watched the battle through his sensors with growing amazement. The small human fleet was not just holding its own against the massive Kroktari armada. It was winning. Enemy ships that had terrorized his people for 3 years were being systematically destroyed by weapons beyond his understanding. "Captain Minji," Taijin called to his communications officer, "are you getting readings on those human weapons?" Minji's bioluminescent patterns showed excitement and confusion. "Sir, their projectile weapons are firing solid rounds at impossible velocities. The energy weapons appear to use contained plasma at temperatures similar to a star's core. I've never seen technology like this." The battle raged across the Nerea system as the Kroktari fleet tried to use their numerical advantage. They swarmed toward the human ships, hoping to overwhelm them with concentrated fire. But the humans fought like nothing the Kroktari had ever encountered. Instead of standing still and trading shots, the human ships moved with fluid grace, their captains coordinating attacks with precision that spoke of years of training together. When 3 Kroktari cruisers moved to surround the Eternal Fury, Captain Jiwan accelerated directly toward them, her ship's guns firing continuously. She passed through their formation like a shark through a school of fish, leaving burning wreckage in her wake. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported to Vorthik, "we've lost 18 ships. The humans have taken no significant damage." Vorthik's carapace turned dark with rage. 18 ships destroyed by 12 primitive vessels? It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was. "Sir, the human flagship is hailing us," his communications officer announced. "Put them on screen," Vorthik snarled. Admiral Hayok's face appeared on the Kroktari view screen. He was calm, professional, and completely without fear. When he spoke, his words were translated into clicks and whistles that the Kroktari could understand. "Admiral Vorthik," Hayok said, "I am Admiral Hayok of the Terran Defense Force. You have 2 choices. Withdraw your fleet immediately, or be destroyed. This is your only warning." Vorthik's mandibles clicked with fury. "You dare threaten the Kroktari Empire? We have conquered hundreds of species across the galaxy. Yes, Hayok replied with cold certainty. But you've never fought humans before. You're about to learn the difference. The transmission ended, leaving Vorthik staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. Outside, the battle continued as human ships carved through his fleet with surgical precision. All remaining ships, Vorthik finally ordered, concentrate fire on the human flagship. I want that arrogant human destroyed. 25 Kroktari ships turned their weapons on the Indomitable. Energy beams and kinetic rounds filled space around the human flagship as the aliens poured everything they had into, destroying their tormentor. But the Indomitable's shields held against the barrage, deflecting and absorbing the enemy fire. And while the Kroktari focused on the flagship, the other human ships continued their deadly work. Lieutenant Young-ho, monitoring communications from his station on the Indomitable, picked up transmissions from the Velani below. Admiral Lee, Velani are asking if they can assist. They want to coordinate the remaining ships with our attack. Hayok considered this for a moment. The Velani had fought bravely for 3 years against impossible odds. They deserved to be part of their own liberation. Tell Admiral Taijin his ships are welcome to join the attack, Hayok ordered. Transmit our tactical frequencies so they can coordinate with our forces. On the ocean world below, Taijin received the message with gratitude. His 15 remaining fighters launched from underwater bases, rising through the depths and breaking the surface in explosions of foam and spray. They were small, damaged vessels compared to the mighty human dreadnoughts, but they carried the hopes of an entire species. All Velani ships, Taijin broadcast to his pilots, coordinate with our human allies. Today, we take back our skies. The combined human Velani force pressed their attack with renewed vigor. The Kroktari fleet, designed to intimidate weaker species through overwhelming force, found itself outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely outclassed. Admiral Vorthik watched his mighty armada crumble around him. Half his fleet was already destroyed, or disabled, and the humans showed no signs of slowing down. For the first time in his military career, he faced the possibility of total defeat. "Sir," his navigation officer reported, "should we signal for reinforcements?" Vorthik considered this. Reinforcements would take days to arrive, and at the current rate of loss, his fleet would be destroyed within hours. But retreat? The Kroktari. Empire had never retreated from any battle dot. Another explosion shook his flagship as human weapons found their mark. Through the viewports, Vorthik could see the burning hulks of ships that had once been the pride of his fleet. Maybe it was time for the Kroktari to learn something new about retreating. Admiral Vorthik's fleet was in full retreat, the surviving Kroktari ships racing toward the outer edge of the Nerea system. But as Admiral Hayok's sensors tracked the fleeing enemy, they detected something that made his blood run cold. "Admiral," Commander Sunny called from her tactical station. "Long-range sensors are picking up a massive structure behind the gas giant. It's single quotes S. Sir. It's one of their processing ships." Hayok's jaw tightened. Processing ships were mobile factories where the Kroktari took their captives to harvest genetic material. If there was one here, it meant thousands of Velani prisoners were being held in conditions too horrible to imagine. "How big?" he asked. 20 kilometers long, sir. It's heavily shielded and appears to be defended by at least 6 heavy cruisers. That stayed behind when the main fleet retreated. Lieutenant Young-ho looked up from his communication station with urgency. "Sir, I'm detecting distress signals from inside that ship. There are definitely prisoners aboard." The bridge fell silent, as everyone understood what this meant. They could pursue the retreating Kroktari fleet and finish them off, or they could attempt a rescue mission against a heavily defended target. Both options carried enormous risks. "Sir," Captain Jiwan's voice came over the communication channel. From the eternal fury, my ship took some damage in the last engagement. The forward shield generators are running at 60% efficiency. My plasma lances need recalibration, added Captain Dongho from the Righteous Thunder. We used them beyond normal parameters during the battle. Admiral Hayok studied the tactical display. A rescue mission would require getting close to the processing ship, which meant fighting through its defensive screen. His ships were damaged from the main battle, and the enemy would be in prepared positions. Commander Sunmi, what's your assessment of a direct assault on that facility? Sunmi's fingers danced over her console as she ran calculations. Sir, the processing ship's position behind the gas giant gives it natural protection from long-range fire. We'd have to get close, which means fighting through their defense screen. Even if we succeed, boarding that ship would be extremely dangerous. How long do we have before they finish? Processing the prisoners. Based on Kroktari standard procedures, maybe 6 hours before they begin final extraction. Once that starts, the prisoners won't survive the process. 6 hours. Not much time to plan and execute a complex rescue mission against a prepared enemy position. But Admiral Hayok had not come this far to leave innocent people to die. Signal all ships, he ordered. We're going after the processing ship. The human fleet regrouped and began moving toward the gas giant. As they approached, the full horror of the Kroktari operation became clear on their sensors. The processing ship was enormous, its hull covered with docking bays and extraction equipment. Around it, the defensive cruisers waited in carefully prepared positions. Sir, Lieutenant Minho reported from the Iron Covenant. The defensive ships are hailing. U.S. They're demanding we withdraw or face destruction. Tell them we'll discuss terms after they release their prisoners. Hayok replied. The Kroktari response was predictable. The 6 defensive cruisers opened fire immediately, their weapons designed to protect the valuable processing facility at all costs. But they were facing human dreadnoughts at close range, and the outcome was never in doubt. Captain Jiwan led the attack, her eternal fury trading shots with 2 enemy cruisers simultaneously. Her damaged shield sparked and flickered under the barrage, but her return fire was devastating. Mass driver rounds punched through enemy hulls, while her crew worked frantically to keep the ship operational. Engineering to bridge came strained. Voice over the internal communication system. Forward shield generators are failing. We can give you maybe 10 more minutes at this power level. Make it 15, Jiwan ordered. We're not leaving without those prisoners. The Iron Covenant and Righteous Thunder flanked the processing ship, their weapons targeting the facility's shield generators and defensive systems. The massive structure shuddered under the assault, but its armor was incredibly thick and designed to withstand attack. Sir, Captain Kiang reported, the processing ship's shields are too strong for conventional weapons. We need to get inside. Somehow, Admiral Hayok studied the tactical display, looking for weaknesses in the enemy position. The processing ship had dozens of docking bays for bringing in prisoners, but they would all be heavily defended. A direct assault would be suicide unless ... Commander Sunmi, do we have any intel on the internal layout of Kroktari processing ships? Some, sir. Intelligence reports indicate they use modular designs with central processing areas and prisoner holding sections. The most vulnerable points would be the main reactor and the prisoner containment areas. And how do we get inside without being blown apart by their defenses? Captain Yunhee's voice crackled over the communication channel from her assault transport. Sir, my Marines are equipped for zero-G combat and ship boarding operations. If you can get us close enough, we can punch through their hull and fight our way to the prisoners. It was risky, extremely risky. The Marines would have to travel through open space under enemy fire, then fight their way through a ship full of hostile aliens to reach the prisoners. But it might be their only chance. Do it, Hayok ordered. All ships provide covering fire for the marine assault. The human fleet concentrated their weapons on the processing ship's defensive systems, while Captain Yoonhee's transport approached from the ship's blind side. The transport was small and fast, designed specifically for boarding operations, but it was still vulnerable to enemy fire. 30 seconds to boarding range, Yoonhee reported, her voice calm despite the danger. The processing ship's defenders realized what was happening and turned their weapons on the approaching transport. Energy beams and projectile rounds filled space around the small vessel as it raced toward its target. Taking heavy fire, Yoonhee called out. Hull breach in Section 3, but we're still operational. 10 seconds to impact. The transport slammed into the processing ship's hull, its reinforced nose punching through the alien metal like a bullet through paper. Immediately, the Marines began cutting their way inside while the ship's automated systems tried to repel the invasion. We're inside, Sergeant Seong-ho reported over the tactical channel. Heavy resistance in the entry corridor. These bugs don't want to give up their ship. The Marines fought their way through narrow passages filled with Kroktari defenders. The aliens were tough fighters in their own environment, but they had never faced human soldiers equipped with powered armor and plasma weapons. The Marines advanced methodically, clearing each section as they moved deeper into the ship. Sir, Seong-ho called out over the sound of weapon fire, we have reached the first prisoner section. You need to see this. The video feed from Seong-ho's armor camera showed a scene that made everyone on the human fleet pause in horror. Hundreds of Vellani prisoners floated in containment tanks, their jellyfish-like bodies connected to extraction equipment that was slowly draining their genetic material. Many were already dead, their bodies drained and discarded. Get them out of there, Captain Yoonhee ordered, her voice tight with anger. The Marines worked quickly to free the surviving prisoners, but the extraction process had weakened many of them beyond recovery. Those who could be moved were loaded onto emergency evacuation pods, while the Marines pushed deeper into the ship. Multiple prisoner sections detected, Seong-ho reported. We're going to need more time to get everyone out. But time was something they didn't have. The remaining Kroktari defensive ships were regrouping for another attack, and the processing ship's own weapons were targeting the human fleet with increasing accuracy. Admiral, Commander Sunmi called out urgently, I'm detecting massive energy. Readings from the processing ship's reactor. They're overloading it. The implications hit everyone at once. Rather than let their prisoners be rescued, the Kroktari were going to destroy the entire ship, taking thousands of innocent lives with them. All Marines, emergency evacuation, Admiral Hayok ordered. Get out of there now. But Captain Yoonhee's voice came back with firm determination. Sir, we still have over 1,000 prisoners to evacuate. We need more time. The ship is going to explode in less than 10 minutes. Then we better work fast. Lieutenant Inzio, working at his engineering station aboard the Eternal Fury, suddenly looked up with an idea. Sir, if I can overload our plasma lances and focus the beam on a single point, I might be able to punch through to their reactor chamber. If we can disrupt their overload sequence. It was desperate, but it might work. Do it, Captain Jiwon ordered. Inzio's fingers flew over his controls, pushing the ship's weapons beyond their safe limits. The plasma lances began to glow with dangerous energy as he prepared to fire everything they had at the processing ship's reactor. Firing in 3 2 1 the concentrated plasma beam lanced out across space, striking the processing ship's hull with the force of a small star. Metal vaporized instantly as the beam punched deep into the ship's core, seeking the reactor that threatened to destroy everyone aboard. The beam found its target, and the processing ship's reactor overload sequence suddenly stopped. But the damage to the ship's hull was massive. and it began breaking apart under the stress. All prisoners evacuated. The rescued Vellani prisoners floated in medical bays aboard the human ships, their jellyfish-like bodies slowly recovering from the horrible extraction process. Admiral Taijin himself had come aboard the Indomitable to thank the humans personally. His bioluminescent patterns showed deep gratitude as he spoke with Admiral Hayok. "Your people saved thousands of lives today," Taijin said through the translation system. "We can never repay this debt." But Admiral Hayok's expression was troubled as he studied the long-range sensor displays. "Admiral, I'm afraid our work isn't finished. Our sensors are detecting a massive fleet approaching from Kroktari space. Over 200 ships, including their Grand Fleet Dreadnoughts." Taijin's patterns shifted to worried blue. "The Kroktari Empire has never suffered a defeat like this. They will send everything they have to restore their reputation." "How long until they arrive?" Hayok asked. 6 hours, maybe 7, Commander Sunmi reported from her station. "Sir, this fleet is enormous. We're talking about the entire Kroktari war machine." A bridge fell silent as everyone understood what this meant. The 12 human ships had performed miracles against the original Kroktari fleet, but 200 enemy vessels was beyond anything they could handle, even with their superior technology. "Admiral," Taijin said quietly, "my people can evacuate to the outer colonies. We have transport ships hidden in the deep ocean trenches. You have done enough, more than enough. Do not sacrifice your fleet for us." Hayok considered this option. It would be the smart military decision. Save his ships, evacuate the Vellani, and retreat to fight another day. But something inside him rebelled against the idea of running from bullies. "Lieutenant Young-ho," he called to his communications officer, "open a channel to Earth Command. Full emergency priority." The response came faster than expected. Fleet Admiral Park's image appeared on the main screen, his expression serious. "Admiral Hayok, we've been monitoring your situation. Command is prepared to authorize full fleet deployment." "How many ships can you send, sir?" "Everything we have in this sector. 53 vessels, including 8 of our newest dreadnoughts. But it will take them 18 hours to reach you." 18 hours. The Kroktari would arrive in 6. The math was simple and depressing. "Sir?" Captain Ji-Wan's voice came over the communication channel. "The Eternal Fury is still operational. My crew and I vote to stay and fight. The righteous thunder stands with you," added Captain Dong-ho. "Iron Covenant ready for battle," confirmed Captain Kiao. One by one, every human ship reported their willingness to make a last stand. But Admiral Hayok knew that courage alone wouldn't be enough against 200 enemy ships. Then Lieutenant Young-ho looked up from his station with excitement. "Sir, I'm receiving multiple signals from across the galaxy. Species that heard about our intervention here. They're offering to help." "What kind of help?" Hayok asked. "Military assistance, sir. The Centauri Republic is sending a battle group. The Altair Confederation has dispatched their home fleet. Even some species I've never heard of are offering ships and supplies." Admiral Taijin's patterns brightened. With amazement, they heard about what you did here, how humans came to fight for strangers. Word is spreading across the galaxy. Over the next few hours, ships began arriving in the Narration system. Not just human reinforcements, but vessels from dozens of different species. Some were small patrol craft, others were powerful warships. All had come because they had heard that someone was finally standing up to the Kroktari Empire, the Altair. Battle cruiser Starwind arrived first, its captain hailing the Indomitable with enthusiasm. "Admiral Hayok, Captain Born of the Altair Confederation. We heard you were having a party and decided to crash it." Next came the sleek ships of the Centauri Republic, followed by the massive stone vessels of the Granite Collective. Each new Arrival added to the growing fleet that filled the space around Nerea. "Sir," Commander Sunmi reported with disbelief, "we now have over 90 ships from 18 different species. This is the largest multi-species fleet in recorded history." But the most surprising arrival came when Admiral Jinwu's human reinforcement fleet emerged from hyperspace. The 53 human ships took positions alongside their alien allies, their crews working to coordinate weapons and tactics with species they had never fought beside before. "Admiral Hayok," Jinwu called over the communication channel. "Sorry, we're late to the party. Did we miss anything?" "Just the opening act," Hayok replied with a smile. "The main event is about to begin." The combined fleet spread out across the Nerea system in battle formation. Humans worked alongside Altair's to coordinate targeting systems. Centauri officers shared tactical data with Granite Collective commanders. For the first time in galactic history, dozens of species were united in common purpose. When the Kroktari Grand Fleet finally arrived, they found not the small human force they expected, but an armada that dwarfed their own. Admiral Vorthik, commanding from his new flagship, stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. Over 100 ships, his tactical officer reported, multiple species configurations. "Sir, they have us outnumbered." For the first time in Kroktari military history, they faced an enemy with superior numbers. But Vorthik was too proud to retreat again. "All ships, attack formation. We will show these inferior species the might of the Kroktari Empire." The battle that followed became known throughout the galaxy as the liberation of Nerea. The Kroktari fought with the desperation of a species that had never known defeat, but they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The human Dreadnoughts led the assault, their weapons carving through enemy formations with surgical precision. Captain Jiwan's Eternal Fury, its battle damage repaired by Centauri engineers, struck like a vengeful angel. Her mass drivers punched through Kroktari armor while her crew worked in perfect coordination with their alien allies. Captain Boram, commanding a human stealth frigate, led precision strikes against Kroktari command ships. Her vessel, nearly invisible to enemy sensors, appeared without warning to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing back into space. The Altair ships used their superior speed to hit and run, never staying in one place long enough for the Kroktari to concentrate fire. The Granite Collective vessels, built like flying mountains, absorbed enemy fire while their massive weapons reduced Kroktari ships to scrap metal. But it was the coordination between species that truly won the day. Human tactical doctrine combined with Altair mobility and Centauri technology created a fighting force that the Kroktari couldn't match. They had spent centuries conquering divided species one at a time. They had never faced a united galaxy. Admiral Vorthik watched his grand fleet crumble around him. Ship after ship fell to the combined assault, their crews fighting bravely, but hopelessly against impossible odds. When his own flagship took critical damage, he finally accepted what his species had never had to face before. "All remaining ships," he clicked over the communication channel. "Signal surrender." The words felt like poison in his mandibles, but they were the only words that could save what remained of his fleet. The battle ended with the Kroktari Empire's first complete surrender in their species' history. The surviving ships were escorted to prisoner facilities while the galaxy celebrated the liberation of Nerea. But the real victory was something else entirely. Admiral Hayok stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking out at the mixed fleet of ships from dozens of worlds. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species had fought together. As equals, the Kroktari had united the galaxy against them, but not in the way they intended. Captain Minji, the Velani communications officer, sent a message that would be remembered throughout history. "To all species across the galaxy," she broadcast, "today we learned that evil can be defeated when good people stand together. The humans came when no one else would. They risked everything for strangers. But they did not win this battle alone. Today, we all won together. Admiral Taijin approached Hayok with gratitude shining in his bioluminescent patterns. Admiral, why did humans choose to help us? What did you gain from fighting for strangers? Hayok thought about the question for a moment and gave the answer that would become humanity's unofficial motto in galactic affairs. Because someone has to stand between the darkness and the light. Today, that someone was us. Tomorrow, it might be someone else. But there will always be someone. The Velani children, freed from their hiding places in the deep ocean trenches, played in the restored coral cities of Nerea. Above them, ships from dozens of worlds worked together to rebuild what the Krokdari had destroyed. The galaxy had learned something important that day. When innocents call for aid, help comes. Sometimes it arrives in the form of 12 human dreadnoughts, responding with tongues of fire. Sometimes it comes as an entire galaxy united in common cause. But it always comes, because that's what good people do when faced with evil. They stand up, they fight back, and they make sure that darkness never wins while light still burns in the galaxy.